Dr. Maya Bennett, a trailblazing oncologist, steps into the spotlight at a prestigious medical conference, ready to present her groundbreaking research. But what should have been a celebration of her hard-earned achievements quickly turns into a trial of resilience. Faced with dismissive colleagues, subtle microaggressions, and outright hostility from a powerful senior organizer, Maya must navigate a web of professional conflict that threatens to undermine her voice. As tensions escalate, Maya's composure is tested again and again, but she refuses to back down. Along the way, she finds unexpected allies, a seasoned researcher who values her expertise, a rising student inspired by her courage, and a few brave voices willing to challenge the status quo. Will Maya's strength be enough to overcome the deeply ingrained biases of her peers? Can her determination not only prove her worth, but also expose the cracks in a system resistant to change? Dr. Maya Bennett adjusted her glasses as the cab pulled up to the sleek glass facade of the Boston International Conference Center. The late afternoon sun reflected off the towering building, its grandeur a stark reminder of the significance of the Innovators in Medicine conference. For Maya, this invitation was both a validation of her years of work and an opportunity to prove her groundbreaking research on cancer treatments to the medical elite. Inside the conference center, the hum of voices and the rhythmic click of shoes on polished floors created a sense of urgency. Maya rolled her suitcase across the marble lobby, her heart beating with anticipation. Dressed in a tailored navy suit that complemented her rich brown skin, she carried herself with quiet confidence. She had arrived early to check into her room and review her presentation one last time. The registration desk was bustling with activity. Maya waited patiently in line, her keen eyes observing the sea of white coats and name tags around her. When it was her turn, she smiled at the receptionist, a young woman with a harried expression. "Dr. Maya Bennett," she said, handing over her registration confirmation. The receptionist glanced at the document, her brow furrowing slightly. "Dr. Bennett, you are scheduled to present tomorrow in the main hall. Welcome to the conference," she said. Her voice was polite, but lacked warmth. Maya nodded, though she noticed the fleeting look of surprise on the woman's face, the kind she had seen many times before. It was the look of someone questioning how a black woman like Maya had earned her place at such a prestigious event. Taking her conference badge, Maya headed toward the elevator. Her suite was on the 12th floor, and as the doors closed, she allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. She thought of her journey to this moment, the late nights in the lab, the constant need to prove herself, and the countless rejections before finally breaking through. This was her chance to let her work speak for itself, and she refused to let doubts or prejudice cloud her focus. The suite was modest but elegant, with a large window offering a view of the Charles River. Maya set her suitcase by the bed and perched on the edge of the armchair, pulling out her laptop. She began reviewing her slides, meticulously going through each detail of her presentation. The numbers and graphs were her armor, the undeniable evidence of her work's value. A knock at the door startled her. Maya opened it to find a bellhop holding a small tray. "Compliments from the conference organizers, Dr. Bennett," he said, smiling as he handed her the tray, which held a single chocolate truffle and a note. The note read, "Welcome to the conference. We hope your stay is productive and enjoyable." Maya thanked the bellhop, closing the door behind her. She placed the tray on the desk and stared at it for a moment. The gesture felt perfunctory, but she told herself it did not matter. She was not here for niceties. The next morning, Maya rose early, her nerves sharper than she expected. She dressed in a crisp white blouse and a black skirt, her professional demeanor masking the butterflies in her stomach. Grabbing her badge, laptop, and notes, she made her way to the main hall for the opening session. The conference hall was vast, its stage flanked by massive screens displaying the agenda. As Maya entered, she scanned the rows of seats, recognizing a few familiar faces from past conferences. She smiled at a couple of polite nods, but was keenly aware of how easily she was overlooked. Dr. Alan Moore, the conference chair, took the stage to welcome attendees. He was a tall man in his 60s with a booming voice and a commanding presence. As he began listing the keynote speakers, Maya's name was mentioned, though his tone carried a note of surprise that felt almost imperceptible but unmistakable to her. After the opening session, Maya mingled in the networking lounge, navigating small clusters of attendees. She introduced herself to a group discussing oncology research, only for Dr. Moore to interrupt moments later. "Ah, Dr. Bennett," he said, his smile tight. "You must be excited about your presentation tomorrow. Will you be presenting solo?" "Yes," Maya replied, her tone steady. "I developed this treatment over the past 5 years. I look forward to sharing the results." "Impressive," Moore said, though his words felt hollow. "Well, conferences like these are as much about networking as they are about science. Be sure to make the most of it." The group dispersed, and Maya was left standing alone, her fists clenched at her sides. His words echoed in her mind. Networking. It was as if he believed her presence here was an anomaly, that she needed to prove she belonged in every room. She spent the rest of the day attending panels and taking notes, all while feeling the weight of subtle glances and dismissive remarks. The undercurrent of skepticism was exhausting, but Maya reminded herself that she had faced worse. That evening, she returned to her suite to prepare for her presentation. Her mind was heavy with the day's interactions, but her resolve remained intact. She reviewed her slides once more, perfecting her speech and practicing her delivery until the words felt like second nature. As she worked, her phone buzzed with a text from her younger sister, Leah, who had always been her biggest supporter. "You're amazing, Maya. Show them what you're made of." Maya smiled, the message a much-needed boost to her spirits. She typed a quick reply, thanking Leah, before setting her phone aside. The next day dawned bright and clear. Maya stood backstage, clutching her notes as the previous speaker wrapped up. She could hear the applause as Dr. Moore introduced her, though his tone lacked the enthusiasm he had shown for others. Dr. Maya Bennett will now present her research on an innovative approach to cancer treatment, Moore said. Maya walked onto the stage, the lights glaring but the audience barely visible beyond the rows of seats. She steadied her breathing and began her presentation. The first few minutes went smoothly. Her confidence grew as she explained the data, but halfway through, her slides froze and the projector flickered off. The disruption was brief, but it rattled her. "Technical difficulties," Moore announced from the side of the stage, his tone almost dismissive. "Carry on." Maya took a deep breath and continued, refusing to let the interruption derail her. She fielded questions with precision, her knowledge shining through. By the end, the audience erupted in applause, though Maya noticed Moore clapping with reluctant detachment. As she stepped off stage, a young woman approached her, her eyes wide with admiration. "Dr. Bennett," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly, "my name is Rachel Daniels. I'm a medical student. Your work is incredible, and your presentation was so inspiring. Thank you." Maya felt a lump in her throat. For a moment, the doubts and slights of the past 2 days melted away. "Thank you, Rachel," she said warmly. "Hearing that means a lot." Rachel's words lingered in Maya's mind as she returned to her seat. For every dismissive glance, there was someone like Rachel, a reminder of why she persevered. That night, as Maya looked out over the glittering lights of the Boston skyline from her suite, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was here for more than recognition. She was here to inspire, to challenge, and to change. This was just the beginning. Maya's alarm buzzed earlier than usual, but she was already awake. The events of the previous day replayed in her mind Dr. Moore's dismissiveness, the technical mishap, and Rachel's heartfelt compliment. She held on to Rachel's words like a lifeline, using them to steady her nerves for the day ahead. Her schedule listed a mid-morning panel titled Innovations in Oncology Research, where she would join several other speakers to discuss the latest advancements. Maya knew this was another chance to solidify her standing, but her chest tightened at the thought of sharing the stage with Dr. Alan Moore. He was moderating the discussion, and his dismissive demeanor still lingered in her memory. As she stepped into the conference hall, Maya's polished appearance belied the tension she felt. Her navy blazer and neatly pressed slacks reflected the quiet confidence she carried despite the subtle slights that had begun to accumulate. She greeted a few colleagues with polite nods and found her place on the stage. The panel was arranged in a semicircle of chairs, each labeled with a nameplate. Maya took her seat beside Dr. Leonard Patel, a senior oncologist with a jovial demeanor who greeted her with a warm smile. To her other side sat Dr. Moore, his posture stiff and authoritative. "Dr. Bennett," Moore said, inclining his head in a gesture that was more obligation than genuine acknowledgement. "Dr. Moore," Maya replied, her tone neutral but firm. She would not give him the satisfaction of sensing her unease. As the panel began, Moore introduced the speakers with a practiced flair, though when he reached Maya's name, his tone faltered ever so slightly, as if her inclusion was an afterthought. The discussion started smoothly, with each panelist outlining their research focus. Maya listened attentively, taking mental notes on the topics presented. When her turn came, she spoke clearly and concisely, explaining the breakthroughs in targeted therapies her team had achieved. This approach, Maya concluded, not only reduces side effects, but significantly improves patient outcomes, particularly for those in advanced stages of the disease. The room was quiet for a moment before polite applause rippled through the audience. Dr. Patel nodded approvingly, but Maya noticed Moore's expression, a faint tightening of the jaw, as though her competence was an inconvenience to him. Moore shifted the focus away from her by posing a complex question to Dr. Patel, whose response meandered into technical jargon. Maya refrained from interjecting, knowing this was a deliberate attempt to sideline her. But then it happened again. The next panelist, Dr. Erickson, built upon an idea Maya had introduced but failed to credit her. Moore encouraged this line of discussion without once looping Maya back into the conversation. Maya's fingers tightened on her notepad, but her face remained composed. She would not let frustration overshadow her professionalism. Midway through the panel, Moore turned to her with a question that carried a thinly veiled challenge. "Dr. Bennett," he said, his voice dripping with polite condescension, "given the early stage of your research, how do you address concerns about its viability in larger clinical trials?" Maya's chest tightened, but she met his gaze evenly. "Dr. Moore," she began, her voice calm, "our trials have already exceeded early benchmarks. The viability has been demonstrated through robust data, which I'd be happy to share further if needed. I believe our approach speaks for itself." There was a faint murmur of approval from the audience, and Moore's lips pressed into a thin line. Before he could respond, Dr. Emily Carter, another panelist, and the only other woman on stage, spoke up. "I've reviewed Dr. Bennett's data, and it's not just viable, it's groundbreaking," Emily said. Her tone was firm, but measured, redirecting the attention to Maya. "We should be asking how this can inform other areas of research, not questioning its validity." Maya turned to Emily, her eyes softening with gratitude. It was rare to find allies in spaces like these, and Emily's intervention felt like a small but meaningful act of solidarity. The panel concluded shortly after, and as the audience applauded, Maya stood, her heart still racing from the subtle barbs she had endured. She wanted to leave quickly, but Emily stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. "You handled that beautifully," Emily said, her expression kind. "He tried to undermine you, but you didn't let him." "Thank you," Maya replied, her voice quieter now that the tension had passed. "And thank you for stepping in. That meant a lot." Emily smiled. "We have to look out for each other in spaces like this. Let me know if you ever want to collaborate." Maya exchanged contact information with Emily, feeling a rare flicker of hope amid the exhaustion. As the panelists dispersed, Maya stepped into the hallway, the hum of conversation surrounding her. She noticed Dr. Moore speaking with a small group of attendees, his voice low but unmistakably critical. "She's overconfident," Maya caught him saying. "Early-stage researchers like her often overpromise and underdeliver." Her chest tightened, but before she could react, she felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Rachel Daniels, the medical student from the previous day. "Dr. Bennett," Rachel said, her voice hesitant but sincere. "I just wanted to say you were amazing up there. You handled that question so gracefully." Maya blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected kindness. Thank you, Rachel. That means more than you know." Rachel hesitated, then added, "I've faced some tough situations in med school. Seeing you stand your ground, it's inspiring. I hope to be as composed as you someday." Maya's lips curved into a small smile. "You'll get there, Rachel. Just remember your work matters, even when others try to undermine it." Rachel nodded, her admiration evident, and Maya felt a warmth she had not expected. These moments of connection, fleeting as they were, reminded her why she kept going. As Maya returned to her suite that evening, the weight of the day pressed down on her. She replayed Moore's comments and the dismissiveness she had faced, but she also thought of Emily's support and Rachel's encouragement. Sitting by the window, Maya gazed out at the city lights, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. The road ahead was long, and the challenges were far from over. But for the first time in a while, she felt a glimmer of hope. She opened her laptop, jotting down notes for tomorrow's presentation. With every word, her resolve grew stronger. She was not just here for herself. She was here for Rachel, for Emily, and for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. This was her fight, and she intended to win it. Maya woke to the sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. She groggily reached for it, blinking at the bright screen. A text message from Rachel Daniels lit up the display. "Good morning, Dr. Bennett. Just wanted to say thank you again for yesterday. Looking forward to your next session. You've got this." The corners of Maya's mouth lifted slightly. Rachel's enthusiasm was a welcome balm after the tense events of the panel. For a moment, Maya let herself feel lighter, but as she got ready for the day, the weight of the conference, the subtle slights, the dismissive comments settled back onto her shoulders. Today would bring more challenges, but Maya resolved to meet them head-on. After all, she had come too far to falter now. The morning was a whirlwind of smaller breakout sessions and networking opportunities. Maya attended a session on innovative treatment delivery systems, taking meticulous notes as she listened to the speaker. She noticed the subtle power dynamics in the room: older, white male doctors dominating the conversation, while younger professionals and women hesitated to interject. Maya held her tongue, choosing instead to absorb the discussion. Her opportunity to speak would come later, during her second presentation. As the session concluded, she made her way to the coffee station. She was pouring herself a cup when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Dr. Bennett, good to see you again." Maya turned to find Dr. David Klein, a well-respected oncologist known for his groundbreaking work. He had been present during her presentation the previous day, nodding approvingly as she answered questions. "Dr. Klein?" Maya said, smiling. "Likewise. How are you enjoying the conference?" "It's been enlightening, though some discussions are predictable," he said, a hint of humor in his tone. "Your presentation, however, was anything but. Your approach to targeted therapy is impressive. I'd like to learn more about your methodology." Maya's chest swelled with pride, though she kept her tone professional. "Thank you. I'd be happy to discuss it further." They chatted briefly, and before parting, Dr. Klein handed her his card. "Let's connect after the conference. There may be opportunities for collaboration." As Maya slipped the card into her pocket, she felt a flicker of validation. Klein's acknowledgement was a reminder that her work was gaining recognition, even among the field's top minds. Later that afternoon, Maya decided to review her notes in one of the smaller lounges. She had just settled into a corner chair when she overheard two voices nearby. "I don't know how she got invited to present. Her work isn't even proven yet," one voice said. Maya's stomach tightened as she recognized the speaker, Dr. Alan Moore. "She handled herself well yesterday, though," another voice replied, hesitant. Moore scoffed. "Handled herself? Please, these diversity hires are all the same. Flashy presentations, no substance. It's all optics." Maya's grip on her notebook tightened, her knuckles turning white. The words stung, but they also ignited a fire within her. She wanted to march over and confront him, to demand he repeat those words to her face, but she knew better. Her mentor's voice echoed in her mind from years ago. "Pick your battles. Let your work speak for itself." Taking a deep breath, Maya rose from her seat and left the lounge. She would not give Moore the satisfaction of knowing she had overheard him. The day's tension stayed with Maya as she returned to her suite that evening. She stared out the window, the city's lights twinkling below. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was she fighting a losing battle? Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a call from her research assistant, Jacob. "Dr. Bennett," Jacob said, his voice cheerful. "How's Boston treating you?" "Eventful," Maya replied, unable to keep the exhaustion from her tone. Jacob paused, then said, "I saw the video of your presentation circulating online. You were incredible. People are really paying attention to your work, Dr. Bennett. I just wanted to remind you that what you're doing matters." Maya closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. "Thank you, Jacob. That means a lot." They chatted briefly before hanging up, and Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. The next day brought Maya's second presentation, a more technical deep dive into her methodology. She arrived early to ensure everything was in place. The room filled quickly, and as she began speaking, she felt the familiar rhythm of her presentation take over. But midway through, the projector flickered again, and her slides disappeared. Maya paused, scanning the room. Dr. Moore stood at the back, his arms crossed. She wondered briefly if this was another technical difficulty or something more deliberate. She adjusted the microphone and addressed the audience. "It seems we're having issues with the slides again, but no matter. Let's continue." For the next 20 minutes, Maya presented without visual aids, her voice steady and her confidence unshaken. By the time she finished, the audience was hanging on her every word. The applause was louder this time, more genuine. As Maya stepped off the stage, several attendees approached her, asking questions and offering their support. Among them was Dr. Emily Carter, who had defended Maya during the panel. "That was remarkable," Emily said. "You didn't miss a beat." "Thank you," Maya replied, her smile genuine. As they talked, a young woman approached hesitantly. It was Rachel. "Dr. Bennett, I just wanted to say again how inspiring you are," Rachel said. "Watching you handle everything with such grace, it gives me hope. Thank you." Maya felt her chest tighten, not with pain, but with something softer pride, maybe even hope. "Thank you, Rachel," she said, placing a hand on the young woman's shoulder. "You remind me why I do this." That evening, as Maya returned to her suite, she thought about the people who had supported her over the past few days: Emily, Klein, Rachel, and even Jacob from afar. Their kindness, though small in the grand scheme of things, had created ripples that kept her afloat. As she looked out over the city again, Maya felt a shift. The doubt that had plagued her the night before was gone, replaced by a quiet determination. She opened her laptop and began drafting a plan not just for her research, but for something bigger. Maya realized she had a responsibility not just to her work, but to the next generation of scientists like Rachel. This was more than a conference. It was a movement waiting to happen, and Maya was ready to lead it. The third day of the conference arrived with a crisp chill in the air, the kind that prickled Maya's skin as she stepped outside to collect her thoughts before her final presentation. The weight of the past few days was heavy but familiar. It was the same feeling she had carried through med school, during grant applications, and in hospital board meetings. Each instance had prepared her for this moment. Returning to her suite, Maya glanced at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked tired, but there was an undeniable fire in her eyes. Today, her presentation in the main auditorium would reach the largest audience of the conference. This was her chance to make an undeniable impact, one that no dismissive glance or comment could overshadow. Maya chose her outfit carefully, settling on a deep emerald blouse paired with tailored black trousers. She adjusted her conference badge, which now felt less like an invitation and more like a challenge to prove her worth. As she walked to the auditorium, her phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Good luck, Dr. Bennett. You're going to be amazing." The message brought a faint smile to Maya's lips. She pocketed her phone and took a deep breath, stepping into the building with renewed determination. The main auditorium buzzed with anticipation as attendees filed in. The tiered seating was nearly full, and the enormous stage at the front was flanked by towering screens that displayed the title of Maya's presentation, Advancing Targeted Oncology, a Patient-Centered Approach. Maya stood backstage, her notes clasped tightly in her hands. A technician adjusted her microphone, and she nodded in thanks. She caught sight of Dr. Alan Moore lingering near the edge of the stage, speaking with another organizer. His presence was a reminder of the challenges she had faced during the conference, but it only strengthened her resolve. "Dr. Bennett," Moore said, his tone overly polished as he approached her. "I trust you're ready?" "Always," Maya replied, her voice steady. "Good," he said, glancing at her notes briefly before turning back toward the audience. "Remember, this is a big stage. Don't let the pressure get to you." Maya suppressed the urge to roll her eyes. "Thank you for the advice, Dr. Moore," she said, her tone clipped. "I'll let my work speak for itself." Before he could respond, the lights in the auditorium dimmed, and the conference host stepped onto the stage to introduce her. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host said, his voice echoing through the expansive room, "our next speaker is Dr. Maya Bennett, whose groundbreaking research in targeted oncology therapies is poised to redefine patient care. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bennett to the stage." The applause was polite, but not thunderous, as Maya stepped into the spotlight. The sheer size of the room and the sea of faces staring back at her were intimidating, but Maya held her head high. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and calm. "Today I want to take you on a journey, one that begins with the patient and ends with a vision for a future where cancer treatment is not just effective, but also compassionate." Her opening was met with nods of interest, and as she moved into the body of her presentation, she could feel the audience leaning in. The data was compelling, and Maya's delivery was precise, even as the slides transitioned seamlessly behind her. But halfway through, the screen went dark. Maya froze for half a second as murmurs rippled through the audience. Her mind raced, but she quickly shifted her focus. "It seems we're having a technical issue," she said, her tone calm and controlled. "Luckily, I know this material well enough to walk you through it without slides." A ripple of laughter followed, but it was supportive rather than mocking. For the next 20 minutes, Maya presented entirely from memory. She described the data with vivid clarity, painting a picture so detailed that the audience seemed captivated despite the lack of visuals. When the projector finally flickered back on during her conclusion, she gestured seamlessly to the restored slides, tying them back into her narrative. "In closing," she said, her voice gaining strength, "this work is not just about innovation. It's about listening to patients, understanding their needs, and ensuring that our advancements serve them, not just the science, because at the heart of medicine is humanity." The room erupted into applause as Maya stepped back from the podium. This time, the applause was genuine and prolonged. As she exited the stage, her heart still pounding, Maya was met by a wave of attendees. Several introduced themselves, offering congratulations and praising her composure under pressure. Among them was Dr. Emily Carter, who had become a quiet ally over the past few days. "That was phenomenal," Emily said, her eyes alight with admiration. "You turned a potential disaster into one of the most memorable presentations of the conference." "Thank you," Maya said, the tension in her shoulders finally beginning to ease. A familiar voice called out behind her. "Dr. Bennett!" She turned to see Rachel Daniels weaving through the crowd, her face beaming. "That was incredible," Rachel said, practically bouncing with excitement. "The way you handled everything, you're amazing." Maya chuckled, the warmth in Rachel's voice soothing her frayed nerves. "Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad you enjoyed it." "I didn't just enjoy it," Rachel said earnestly. "You showed everyone in that room what it means to persevere. You've inspired me more than you know." Maya placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder, her voice soft. "You're why I do this, Rachel. Keep that fire alive, and you'll go far." Later, as the crowd thinned, Maya found herself alone near the back of the auditorium. She watched as the stage crew dismantled the equipment, reflecting on the roller coaster of emotions she had experienced. She was about to leave when Dr. David Klein approached her. "Dr. Bennett," he said, extending his hand. "That was masterful. Not just the science, but your presence. You owned that stage." Maya shook his hand, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "Thank you, Dr. Klein. That means a lot coming from you." Klein hesitated, then added, "I've been around this field long enough to recognize the kind of barriers you've had to face. You handled them with grace, but you shouldn't have to. I want you to know that there are people in this community who see your value and will stand with you." Maya's throat tightened. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Klein nodded. "Let's talk soon. I think your work could benefit from broader collaboration." As he walked away, Maya felt a sense of validation she hadn't expected. That evening, back in her suite, Maya sat by the window overlooking the city. Her phone buzzed with messages, congratulations from colleagues, texts from Jacob, and another message from Rachel. "Dr. Bennett, you're changing lives. Thank you for showing me what's possible." Maya set the phone down and exhaled deeply. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel the weight of what she had accomplished. This conference was supposed to be about science, but it had become something more. It was about proving she belonged, about inspiring others like Rachel, and about paving the way for change in a system that still had far to go. Maya knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she felt ready. Because this was not just her fight, it was a fight for everyone who had ever been told they did not belong, and she intended to win. The soft morning light filtered through Maya's hotel room curtains as she stared at her laptop screen, responding to the flood of emails that had poured in overnight. Attendees from the conference, fellow researchers, and even medical students had reached out, praising her presentation. One email stood out, a message from Dr. David Klein. "Maya, your presentation yesterday was one of the most compelling I've seen in years. I'd like to discuss a potential partnership on a multi-center study, building on your findings. Let me know if you're open to meeting before the conference ends. Best regards, David Klein." Maya reread the email, her chest tightening with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. A partnership with Klein could open doors she had not even dared to dream of. But beneath her excitement was a cautious voice, reminding her how often such opportunities came with strings attached or unspoken expectations. She decided to respond. "Dr. Klein, thank you for your kind words. I would be honored to meet and discuss the potential collaboration. Let me know when you're available." Hitting send, Maya leaned back in her chair and let out a slow breath. The conference was halfway over, but it was already proving to be a turning point, not just for her career, but for her sense of belonging in a field that often felt unwelcoming. Later that morning, Maya attended a networking event in one of the hotel's ornate ballrooms. The air was thick with the hum of conversation and the clinking of coffee cups. She moved through the room with practiced ease, greeting familiar faces and introducing herself to new ones. As she approached a group of researchers discussing the latest advancements in oncology, she overheard a snippet of conversation that stopped her in her tracks. Impressive work, but you know how these diversity pushes are. They're more about appearances than substance. The voice belonged to Dr. Alan Moore. Maya froze, her heart sinking. She had endured his veiled criticisms and dismissive behavior all week, but hearing him speak so openly about her in such a setting left her feeling exposed. Before she could decide whether to confront him, Dr. Emily Carter appeared at her side. "Don't let him ruin your day," Emily said quietly, her tone laced with irritation. "People like him thrive on making others feel small." Maya turned to Emily, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Thank you," she said. "I'm just tired of it." Emily smiled sympathetically. "I know the feeling. But remember, your work is speaking for itself. People are paying attention for the right reasons." They moved to a quieter corner of the room, and Emily began sharing her own experiences of facing skepticism and bias early in her career. "I've been in your shoes," Emily said. "It's isolating, but you're not alone. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing an incredible job holding your ground." Maya's chest swelled with gratitude. Emily's words were a reminder that even in the face of adversity, allies existed. That afternoon, Maya met with Dr. Klein in a small conference room near the main auditorium. He greeted her warmly, his demeanor genuine and approachable. "Maya," he began, gesturing for her to take a seat. "Thank you for taking the time. I know you must be busy with the conference." "Of course," Maya replied. "I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you." They spent the next hour discussing her research, potential avenues for collaboration, and the logistics of a multi-center study. Klein's questions were thoughtful, and his enthusiasm for her work felt authentic. "I'll be honest with you," Klein said as they wrapped up. "I've been attending these conferences for decades, and it's not often I see someone with your level of clarity and vision. I think your approach could revolutionize how we treat late-stage cancers." Maya felt a lump rise in her throat. "Thank you, Dr. Klein. That means a lot." "Please, call me David," he said with a smile. "I'll have my team draft a proposal for the study. Let's keep the momentum going." As Maya left the meeting, she felt a sense of possibility she had not experienced in years. For once, the recognition she was receiving felt earned rather than begrudging. That evening, Maya attended a dinner reception hosted by the conference organizers. The grand ballroom was adorned with glittering chandeliers, and tables were set with fine china and elegant floral arrangements. Maya was seated at a table with Emily Carter, Rachel Daniels, and several other attendees she had met throughout the week. The conversation flowed easily, a refreshing change from the tense interactions that had defined the start of the conference. Rachel, the medical student who had been such a bright spot for Maya, leaned in during a lull in the conversation. "Dr. Bennett," Rachel said softly, "I just wanted to thank you again. Watching you stand your ground, especially during that panel, has been life-changing for me. It's made me realize how much power we have when we speak up." Maya placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder, her voice gentle. "Rachel, never forget that your voice matters. The path isn't always easy, but it's worth it. And you're going to do amazing things, I can see it already." The sincerity in Rachel's eyes brought a warmth to Maya's chest that she had not felt in days. For all the challenges she faced, moments like this reminded her why she had chosen this path. As the dinner wound down, Maya found herself in a quiet corner of the room, reflecting on the day's events. The unexpected kindness of people like Emily and David, and the unyielding support of someone as young as Rachel, had shifted something within her. She thought back to her younger self, the medical student, who had doubted her place in the world of medicine. What would she have given to see someone like herself on a stage like this? To hear words of encouragement from someone who understood the struggles she faced. Maya realized that she was no longer just fighting for her own recognition. She was becoming the role model she had once needed, and that realization gave her a renewed sense of purpose. As she returned to her suite, she opened her laptop and began drafting ideas for a mentorship program for underrepresented medical students. If she could help pave the way for the next generation, perhaps the road would not be as lonely for them as it had been for her. This was no longer just her fight, it was a fight for all those who came after her, and Maya was determined to win it. The energy in the conference hall was different on the fourth day. There was a subtle but palpable shift, a quiet acknowledgement of Maya Bennett's presence and the waves she had been making. From the senior researchers exchanging polite nods with her, to the younger attendees stopping her in the halls to offer words of admiration, Maya felt a momentum building. Yet, for every step forward, there were barriers. Maya arrived early to the next panel discussion, Future Trends in Oncology Research. Dr. Alan Moore would again moderate, a detail that had not escaped her notice. She took her seat on stage beside her fellow panelists, carefully smoothing her emerald blouse, a favorite that made her feel confident and composed. The room filled quickly, and soon the session began. Moore introduced the panelists with his usual flourish, saving Maya for last. His tone, as always, carried an undercurrent of condescension. And finally, Dr. Maya Bennett, Moore said. She's brought some interesting perspectives to the conference this year. Maya's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. She had long since learned to let such remarks roll off her back, but that did not make them sting any less. The discussion started smoothly enough, with the panelists presenting their insights and answering Moore's carefully curated questions. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she leaned into her expertise, addressing the topic with clarity and precision. But then Moore interrupted. "Dr. Bennett," he said, his voice laced with faux curiosity, "given the untested nature of your methodology, how do you respond to concerns about its practicality?" Maya paused, her mind racing. The question was a thinly veiled attempt to undermine her credibility, but she refused to rise to the bait. "Thank you, Dr. Moore," she said, her tone measured. "I'd be happy to address that. While it's true that my methodology is still in its early stages, our data from the initial trials shows unprecedented efficacy. We're confident that with further validation, this approach could become a new standard in treatment." The audience murmured in approval, and Maya caught a glimpse of Rachel Daniels, seated near the back of the room, giving her a thumbs up. Moore, however, was not satisfied. "But isn't it risky," he pressed, "to put so much faith in a treatment that hasn't yet been widely tested? Could it not lead to overpromising outcomes?" Maya straightened in her seat, her voice unwavering. "Every advancement in medicine begins as a hypothesis, Dr. Moore. The only way to innovate is to explore the unknown. My team and I have approached this with rigor and integrity, and I stand by our findings." The room grew quiet, the tension palpable. Maya's calm rebuttal had left Moore little room to maneuver, but he was not finished. "Well," he said with a tight smile, "perhaps it's just my years of experience speaking, but I've learned to temper my expectations when it comes to unproven ideas." The implication was clear, and Maya felt the heat of his words settle in the pit of her stomach. Before she could respond, a voice rang out from the audience. "That's enough." All eyes turned to Dr. Emily Carter, who had risen from her seat. "Dr. Moore," Emily said, her voice firm but steady, "your comments are unprofessional and unbecoming of a moderator. Dr. Bennett has demonstrated her expertise time and again at this conference. I think it's time we acknowledge her contributions instead of undermining them." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, some in agreement, others in shock at the open confrontation. Maya felt her chest tighten, not with discomfort, but with gratitude. Moore's face reddened, his composure cracking for the first time. "I'm simply encouraging a healthy debate," he said defensively. "Healthy debate doesn't mean targeted criticism," Emily countered, crossing her arms. "It means mutual respect." The audience applauded, a smattering of claps at first, then growing into a more unified show of support. Maya glanced at Rachel, who was clapping vigorously, her face beaming with pride. After the session, Maya found herself surrounded by attendees offering words of encouragement. "You handled that beautifully," said one researcher. "Dr. Moore has always been a bit too traditional," said another, carefully choosing his words. "It's good to see someone challenge him." Maya smiled politely, though her thoughts were elsewhere. She was grateful for the support, but the interaction had been draining. As the crowd thinned, Emily approached her. "I hope I didn't overstep," Emily said, her expression apologetic. "I just couldn't sit there and watch him try to tear you down." "You didn't overstep," Maya said warmly. "You stood up for what was right." "Thank you, Emily. It means more than you know." Emily smiled, and the two women walked out of the auditorium together, a newfound camaraderie forming between them. Later that afternoon, Maya found a quiet corner in the networking lounge to collect her thoughts. She sipped her coffee, replaying the events of the panel in her mind. The sting of Moore's words was still fresh, but so was the warmth of Emily's defense and the applause that followed. As she scrolled through her email, a notification popped up. "A recording of your panel has been uploaded to the conference portal." Curiosity got the better of her, and she clicked the link. Watching the video, she was struck by how composed she appeared, even as Moore tried to undermine her. Seeing Emily rise to her defense brought a lump to her throat. The comments section below the video was already filling with praise. "Dr. Bennett is a force to be reckoned with." Finally, someone calling out Moore's behavior. "Kudos to Dr. Carter and Dr. Bennett. This is why representation matters." Maya leaned back in her chair, a mixture of relief and determination settling over her. She had faced Moore's criticism head-on, and not only had she held her ground, but she had also earned the respect and support of her peers. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Dr. Bennett, you were incredible. I'll never forget what I saw today. Thank you for showing me what it means to be brave." Maya smiled, the weight of the day lifting slightly. She typed a quick reply. "Thank you, Rachel. Your support means the world to me. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." That evening, Maya attended a private dinner with a smaller group of researchers, including Dr. David Klein. The atmosphere was relaxed, the conversation flowing easily. Klein raised his glass at one point and said, "To Maya, for showing us all what it means to lead with integrity." The group toasted, and Maya felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the wine in her glass. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to relax. She had fought hard to be here, and while the road was far from over, she was beginning to see that she was not fighting alone. As she returned to her suite that night, Maya looked out over the city skyline. She thought about Rachel, Emily, and even the younger attendees who had stopped her in the halls to offer words of encouragement. This conference had tested her in ways she had not anticipated, but it had also reminded her of why she had chosen this path. She was here not just for herself, but for the next generation of scientists and researchers who would follow in her footsteps. And for them, Maya would keep fighting. The morning after the panel, Maya woke to an inbox overflowing with messages. Emails from attendees, researchers, and students poured in, each one praising her composure during the confrontation with Dr. Alan Moore. Some thanked her for her courage, while others shared their own stories of feeling dismissed or overlooked in similar spaces. Maya sipped her coffee as she read through the messages. The stories were humbling, a stark reminder of how many people faced the same challenges she had. She felt a renewed sense of responsibility, not just to continue her work, but to amplify the voices of others who needed a platform. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from Dr. Emily Carter. "Morning, Maya. Just saw the panel recording circulating on social media. You're making waves, my friend. Let me know if you want to debrief over lunch." Maya smiled. Emily had become an unexpected but invaluable ally over the past few days. She typed back a quick reply. "Thanks, Emily. Lunch sounds great. Let's meet at noon." At noon, Maya and Emily met at a small cafe near the conference center. The noise of the bustling crowd provided a low hum of privacy as they settled into their seats. "You're the talk of the conference," Emily said, grinning as she set down her cup. "And I mean that in a good way. People are starting to see you for what you are, a trailblazer." Maya chuckled softly. "I hope that's what they're saying. Part of me worries they're just watching the video for the drama." "There's always going to be drama," Emily replied, her tone serious. "But what you did? That wasn't just standing up for yourself. It was standing up for everyone who's ever been talked over or dismissed. That matters." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of Emily's words. "I'm trying not to let it get to me, but it's exhausting. Every step forward feels like it comes with a dozen hurdles." Emily reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. "You're not alone in this, Maya. You have people who see you and support you. Never forget that." Maya's chest tightened with gratitude. "Thank you, Emily. I needed to hear that." Later that afternoon, Maya was preparing for her final breakout session when Rachel Daniels appeared at her side, holding a clipboard and looking eager. "Dr. Bennett," Rachel began, her voice trembling slightly. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but I wanted to share something with you." Maya set down her notes and turned to Rachel. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Rachel handed her the clipboard. On it was a typed proposal for a student-led initiative to address diversity and inclusion in medical education. "I've been working on this for a while," Rachel said, her cheeks flushing. "But after watching you at the panel yesterday, I realized I needed to do more than just think about it. I wanted to show it to you first, get your feedback." Maya scanned the proposal, her eyes widening as she read. Rachel had outlined a comprehensive plan, from mentorship programs to scholarship funds, all aimed at creating a more equitable medical field. "This is incredible," Maya said, looking up at Rachel. "You've put so much thought into this. It's exactly the kind of work we need to be doing." Rachel's face lit up. "You really think so?" "I do," Maya replied firmly. "And I'd be happy to help you get this off the ground." Rachel's eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Dr. Bennett. I can't tell you how much that means to me." Maya placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder. "The work you're doing is important, Rachel. Never doubt that. And remember, you don't have to do it alone." That evening, Maya attended the conference's networking gala. The grand ballroom was illuminated with chandeliers, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the space. Maya moved through the crowd, engaging in conversations with colleagues and researchers. For the first time, she noticed a shift in how people approached her. The same individuals who had once looked past her were now seeking her out, asking about her work and offering their support. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself in a small group that included Dr. David Klein. "You're becoming quite the star of the conference," Klein said with a chuckle. "Not exactly what I planned," Maya replied, smiling. "Sometimes the best leaders don't plan to lead," Klein said, his tone serious. "They just do what's right, and people follow." Maya felt her cheeks flush. "I appreciate that, David. It's been a challenging week, but moments like this make it worthwhile." Klein nodded. "Your work is groundbreaking, but what's just as important is your ability to inspire. Keep doing what you're doing, Maya. The field needs you." As the gala wound down, Maya stepped outside to catch her breath. The cool evening air was a welcome contrast to the warmth of the ballroom. She gazed out at the city lights, reflecting on the past few days. The confrontation with Moore, the support from Emily and Rachel, the opportunities with Klein, it all felt like a turning point. For years, Maya had fought to carve out a place for herself in a field that often seemed intent on keeping her out. But now she realized she was not just carving a place for herself, she was creating space for others to join her. Her phone buzzed with a new message from Rachel. "Dr. Bennett, thank you for everything. I'm more motivated than ever to make a difference, and it's because of you." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with pride. She typed a quick reply. "You're going to do amazing things, Rachel. I'm proud of you." As she slipped her phone back into her pocket, Maya felt a sense of peace she had not experienced in years. The path ahead would not be easy, but she was no longer walking it alone. This was more than a conference. It was a movement, and Maya was ready to lead it. The final day of the conference dawned cool and overcast, the gray sky reflecting Maya's mixed emotions. While she was proud of the ground she had gained over the past few days, she knew that the underlying issues within the medical community were far from resolved. The conference may have been a personal victory, but the system itself needed accountability and change. Maya sat by the window in her suite, nursing a cup of coffee as she reviewed her notes for the day. Her closing presentation would address systemic barriers in medical research, an issue she had long been passionate about. This topic was more personal than clinical, a rare departure from her usual data-driven approach. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Your work is incredible, Maya. Don't hold back today, this is your moment." Maya smiled, the warmth of Emily's support bolstering her resolve. She quickly typed back, "Thank you, Emily. Let's make it count." By mid-morning, Maya was on stage in one of the smaller lecture halls. The room was full, with attendees spilling into the aisles. Her topic, addressing bias in medical innovation, had drawn a diverse audience, including students, researchers, and even journalists covering the conference. Maya began with a story, recounting her earliest days as a medical student, when she had struggled to find mentors who believed in her potential. "Representation is not a luxury," she said, her voice steady but impassioned. "It's a necessity. Without diverse voices at the table, we fail to address the needs of entire populations." As she transitioned into the systemic barriers she had faced throughout her career, Maya noticed the audience leaning in, their attention rapt. She spoke about grant rejections that cited unrealistic goals and hiring committees that had questioned whether she could handle the demands of her position. "These experiences are not unique to me," Maya continued. "They're shared by countless others who've been overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated because of their race, gender, or background. If we want true innovation in medicine, we need to dismantle these barriers, not just acknowledge them." Her words resonated. By the time she finished, the room erupted into applause. Maya saw Rachel Daniels in the back, clapping vigorously, her face lit with pride. After the session, Maya was surrounded by attendees eager to share their thoughts. "Your presentation was incredible," one researcher said. "We need more voices like yours in these spaces." "I've felt the same struggles you described," another attendee added, her voice tinged with emotion. "Thank you for speaking up." Maya thanked each of them, the outpouring of support reaffirming her decision to address such a challenging topic. As the crowd began to thin, Rachel approached her, holding a small notebook. "Dr. Bennett," Rachel said, her voice shaking slightly, "I wanted to give you this." Maya took the notebook and flipped it open. Inside were handwritten notes detailing Rachel's experiences as a medical student, her triumphs, frustrations, and aspirations. "This is incredible," Maya said, her voice soft. "I thought it might help," Rachel said, "for whatever you're working on next. You've inspired me so much, and I wanted to give something back." Maya smiled, her eyes misting slightly. "Thank you, Rachel. This means more to me than you know." Later that afternoon, Maya was approached by a journalist covering the conference. "Dr. Bennett," the journalist began, her tone professional but warm, "I'm writing a feature on systemic challenges in medicine, and your presentation was a highlight of the conference. Would you be open to an interview?" Maya hesitated for a moment. She knew the risks of speaking out, how quickly narratives could be twisted or minimized, but she also knew the importance of using her platform while she had it. "I'd be happy to," Maya said, her voice steady. The interview was conducted in a quiet corner of the conference center. The journalist asked thoughtful questions about Maya's experiences, her research, and her vision for a more equitable medical field. "What do you hope to achieve by addressing these issues so openly?" the journalist asked. Maya took a deep breath before answering. "Change," she said simply. "I want to see a medical community where talent and innovation are valued above all else, where no one has to fight twice as hard to be seen or heard. And I want to pave the way for those who come after me, so they can focus on their work instead of their worthiness." By the evening gala, news of Maya's presentation and interview had spread throughout the conference. Attendees approached her with a newfound respect, while others whispered her name as she passed. Dr. David Klein found her near the refreshments table, his expression thoughtful. "Maya," he said, "your words today struck a chord with a lot of people, including me. The field has needed someone to say these things for a long time." "Thank you, David," Maya replied. "I just hope it leads to action." "It will," Klein said firmly. "And I'd like to help. I'm on the board of an organization that funds initiatives aimed at increasing diversity in medicine. I think you'd be a great addition." Maya's eyes widened. "That sounds incredible. I'd love to learn more." Klein smiled. "I'll send you the details. This is just the beginning, Maya." As the gala wound down, Maya stepped outside to catch her breath. The crisp night air was refreshing after the heat of the crowded ballroom. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Dr. Bennett, thank you for everything. You've changed the way I see my future. I hope one day I can do the same for someone else." Maya smiled, her chest tightening with pride and gratitude. She typed back, "You already are, Rachel. Keep pushing forward." Looking out at the glittering city lights, Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This week had tested her in ways she had not anticipated, but it had also given her hope. The system still had a long way to go, but she was no longer fighting it alone. Maya inhaled deeply, the cool air grounding her. This was more than a conference. It was a movement, a chance to reshape the field she loved into something better. And Maya Bennett was ready to lead the way. The sun broke through the clouds on the final morning of the conference, casting warm streaks of light across the sprawling Boston skyline. Maya stood in front of the full-length mirror in her suite, adjusting the lapel of her blazer. Today was the conference's closing panel, where attendees would reflect on the event's key takeaways and discuss actionable steps moving forward. Maya's presentation on systemic bias had ignited conversations throughout the conference, and whispers of change filled the air. Yet Maya knew from experience that words, no matter how well received, often lost their weight once the applause died down. Change required accountability, and Maya was determined to make that clear today. As she made her way to the auditorium, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. "Big day. Let's hold them accountable together." Maya typed back a quick reply. "Absolutely. Let's make it count." The closing panel was held in the largest auditorium, and every seat was filled. The stage was set with 5 chairs, one of which was reserved for Maya. Dr. Alan Moore sat in the center, his authoritative presence as commanding as ever, though there was a noticeable tension in his posture. The events of the week had not been kind to his reputation, and Maya's rising influence had shifted the balance of power in ways he clearly found uncomfortable. As the session began, Moore offered opening remarks, his voice steady but lacking the usual confidence. "We've had a productive week," he said, scanning the audience. "Many important ideas have been shared, and we hope to carry that momentum into actionable outcomes." When it was Maya's turn to speak, she leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. "While this conference has showcased innovation, it's also highlighted the barriers that continue to hold our field back," Maya said. "We cannot truly innovate until we address the systemic biases that stifle creativity and exclude valuable perspectives. This week has proven that these conversations are long overdue, but they must be the beginning of change, not the end. The audience murmured in agreement, and Maya could see heads nodding throughout the room. Even Moore shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Dr. Bennett, you've spoken passionately about systemic bias," Moore said, his tone carefully neutral. "But change doesn't happen overnight. What steps do you propose we take to begin addressing these issues?" Maya met his gaze, her expression steady. "Accountability is the first step," she said. "That means creating systems that actively dismantle bias, reviewing hiring practices, increasing representation in leadership, and ensuring that diversity is more than a buzzword. It also means acknowledging the harm caused by dismissive or discriminatory behaviors, even when they come from those in positions of power." The room grew quiet, the weight of Maya's words settling over the audience. Moore's jaw tightened, but he did not respond. After the panel, attendees approached Maya in a steady stream, thanking her for her candor and offering their support. Among them was Rachel Daniels, who handed Maya a neatly folded piece of paper. "This is a draft of the proposal we talked about," Rachel said, her voice filled with nervous excitement. "I'd love to hear your feedback." Maya unfolded the paper, scanning the detailed outline. It was a bold, ambitious plan to establish mentorship programs, scholarships, and workshops aimed at supporting underrepresented students in medicine. "This is incredible, Rachel," Maya said, her voice filled with pride. "You're going to change lives with this." Rachel beamed. "Only because I had someone like you to look up to. Thank you for believing in me." Maya placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder. "Always. And I'll be here to support you every step of the way." Later that afternoon, Maya was approached by Dr. David Klein, who had become one of her strongest allies during the conference. "Maya, I just got off the phone with the board of the diversity initiative I mentioned," Klein said. "They're eager to bring you on as an advisor. Your work and your voice are exactly what they need." Maya felt a swell of gratitude. "Thank you, David. I'd be honored to join. This is the kind of work I've wanted to do for years." Klein nodded. "And there's more. I've also spoken with a few other attendees who want to collaborate on developing a formal framework for addressing bias in our institutions. Your presentation was the catalyst for this. You've started something big, Maya." Maya's throat tightened, emotion threatening to spill over. "I'm just glad people are listening," she said. "This isn't about me, it's about all of us." That evening, as the conference drew to a close, Maya attended a private dinner with a small group of key attendees, including Emily and Klein. The atmosphere was celebratory, but reflective, with discussions centered on the next steps for translating the week's conversations into meaningful action. "To Maya," Emily said, raising her glass, "for reminding us why we do this work and for showing us how to lead with courage and integrity." The group toasted, and Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment. For so long she had fought to be seen and heard, but now she was no longer alone in that fight. Back in her suite, Maya sat by the window, the city lights twinkling below. Her phone buzzed with notifications, emails from colleagues, messages from attendees, and alerts about her presentation's recording gaining traction online. One email caught her eye. It was from a senior executive at a major hospital system. "Dr. Bennett, your presentation and leadership at the conference were inspiring. We'd like to explore opportunities to collaborate on initiatives that align with your vision for equity in medicine. Let's schedule a meeting soon." Maya set the phone down, a quiet smile spreading across her face. This conference had tested her resolve, but it had also opened doors she had not imagined. The path ahead would be challenging, but she felt ready to face it, knowing she had allies by her side and a growing community rallying behind her. For Maya, this was more than a personal victory. It was a step toward transforming a system that had long resisted change. And as she closed her laptop and gazed out at the skyline, she felt certain of one thing. This was only the beginning. Maya stood at the airport terminal, her suitcase in one hand and her phone in the other. The conference was over, and the buzz of it still lingered in her mind. Over the past week, she had faced challenges that tested her resolve and moments that reignited her passion for her work. Now, as she prepared to return home, she was struck by the weight of what lay ahead. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rachel Daniels. "Dr. Bennett, thank you for everything. I've already started reaching out to a few faculty members about the mentorship initiative. I'm nervous but excited. I wouldn't have had the courage without you." Maya's chest tightened with emotion. Rachel's determination felt like a victory, not just for Rachel, but for the movement Maya hoped to build. She quickly replied, "Rachel, I'm so proud of you. Keep pushing forward. You're already making a difference." The flight home gave Maya time to reflect. She stared out of the airplane window at the patchwork of clouds below, her thoughts swirling. The conference had proven that systemic barriers still ran deep in the medical field, but it had also shown her the power of collective action. Emily Carter's unwavering support, David Klein's willingness to create opportunities, and Rachel's bold steps toward change had reinforced Maya's belief that allies were essential. She didn't have to fight this battle alone. Maya opened her laptop, scrolling through the notes she had jotted down throughout the week. Ideas for mentorship programs, advocacy initiatives, and policy reforms filled the screen. She smiled, feeling a sense of purpose take shape. This was the beginning of something bigger than her. Back at her apartment, Maya set down her suitcase and sank into the plush couch. The familiar comfort of home was a welcome reprieve after the intensity of the conference. She checked her email, finding a message from Dr. David Klein. "Maya, the board meeting for the Diversity Initiative is set for next month. They're eager to hear your ideas. Let me know if you'd like to meet before then to strategize." Maya typed a quick response, expressing her enthusiasm and proposing a meeting the following week. Klein's willingness to involve her in meaningful work felt like a door opening to the future she had envisioned. Over the next few days, Maya threw herself into her plans. She drafted outlines for workshops aimed at addressing systemic bias in medical institutions, detailing steps for fostering inclusivity and accountability. She reached out to Emily Carter, brainstorming ways to support underrepresented researchers. One evening, Maya received a surprise call from Rachel. "Dr. Bennett," Rachel began, her voice bubbling with excitement, "I wanted to share some good news. I presented the mentorship initiative to a few faculty members today, and they loved it. They want to help me move it forward." "That's incredible, Rachel," Maya said, her heart swelling with pride. "I knew you could do it." "I wouldn't have even started if it weren't for you," Rachel said. "Thank you for believing in me." Maya smiled, her voice soft. "You did this, Rachel, and this is just the beginning." Weeks turned into months, and Maya's work began to gain traction. The partnerships she forged at the conference blossomed into meaningful collaborations. She joined David Klein's Diversity Initiative as an advisor, helping to shape policies that would address inequities in medical education and research. Rachel's mentorship program gained momentum as well, drawing interest from students and faculty alike. Maya watched with pride as Rachel grew into her role as a leader, finding her voice and inspiring others along the way. One day, Maya received an invitation to speak at a national medical symposium. The event's theme was Building Equity in Medicine, and the invitation highlighted her contributions as a thought leader in the field. Maya hesitated as she read the email, her mind flashing back to the moments of doubt she had faced at the Boston conference. But those doubts had been met with resilience, and this invitation felt like a validation of her journey. On the day of the symposium, Maya stood backstage, waiting to be introduced. The room beyond the curtain was packed, filled with researchers, students, and medical professionals eager to hear her speak. When her name was announced, Maya stepped onto the stage, her head held high. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Today, I want to talk about the power of accountability and the importance of collective action. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it begins with the courage to challenge the status quo." As she spoke, Maya saw faces in the audience light up with recognition and hope. Among them were Emily and Rachel, their smiles a testament to the bonds they had built. Maya closed her speech with a call to action. "We have the power to create a future where innovation and inclusivity go hand in hand. Let's not wait for change. Let's be the change." The room erupted into applause, the sound reverberating through Maya's chest. After the symposium, Maya stood with Emily and Rachel, the three women exchanging hugs and congratulations. "You were incredible," Emily said, her eyes shining. "Absolutely," Rachel added. "You're changing the game, Dr. Bennett." Maya smiled, her heart full. "We're changing it together." That night, as Maya returned to her hotel room, she sat by the window and looked out at the city lights. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth it. She was no longer just fighting for herself, she was part of something larger, something transformative. And as she opened her laptop to jot down new ideas for the future, Maya felt a deep sense of hope. This was just the beginning. Maya's story is one of resilience, hope, and the relentless pursuit of change. Her journey reminds us that every step toward justice, no matter how small, creates ripples that inspire others to act. If Maya's story resonated with you, if it inspired you to challenge the status quo, and if you believe in creating a future built on equity and kindness, join the movement. Subscribe to stay inspired by more stories of perseverance, hope, and change. Let's keep walking this path together. Let us continue amplifying voices, celebrating courage, and paving the way for a brighter tomorrow. Hit that subscribe button now. Together, we can make a difference.